November 26, 1922. A candle trembles in Howard Carter's hand as he extends it through a hole chiseled into a sealed door. Behind him, Lord Carnarvon's voice cuts through 3,000 years of silence. "Can you see anything?" Carter's answer echoes through history. "Yes, wonderful things." 5 months later, Carnarvon would be dead. Within 7 years, 12 people connected to this tomb would follow him. The newspapers screamed about the curse of the pharaohs, but this isn't a story about superstition. This is about what actually happened when Carter broke that seal. The truth is more disturbing than any curse. The boy buried inside was never meant to be remembered. Tutankhamun died around 1323 BCE at 18 years old. He wasn't a great warrior or mighty king. After his death, his name was deliberately erased from official records. Someone wanted him forgotten. His tomb was too small, clearly repurposed in haste. The mummification was rushed and sloppy. They'd used too much oil, causing a chemical reaction with his flesh inside the sealed coffin. The body essentially combusted, charring from the inside out. Remember what his body became in that darkness. It matters when we discuss what killed Lord Carnarvon. Howard Carter wasn't born into wealth. An artist's son, he'd clawed his way into Egyptology through obsessive determination. Meticulous, stubborn, absolutely convinced that somewhere beneath the sand lay an untouched royal tomb. Lord Carnarvon was his opposite, a British aristocrat who funded excavations as a hobby. But by 1922, after 6 fruitless years, he was finished. The money had run dry. He told Carter it was over. Carter begged for one final season. Carnarvon agreed reluctantly. On November 4th, 1922, a waterboy's foot struck stone where thousands had walked before. He brushed away sand and found a carved step, then another. By sunset, they'd uncovered a staircase descending into bedrock, ending at a plastered doorway stamped with ancient seals. Carter cabled Carnarvon in England. "At last have made wonderful discovery in valley, a magnificent tomb with seals intact." Finding the tomb was the easy part. Surviving it would prove impossible for some. Carnarvon arrived November 23rd. 3 days later, they broke through the sealed door. Stale air rushed out, trapped for 3,000 years. Carter's candle flickered in the strange wind. As his eyes adjusted, the candlelight caught something that froze him in place. Gold. Everywhere. The antechamber was chaos. Gilded chariots, beds shaped like animals, guardian statues, furniture, chests jumbled together as if packed in desperate haste. Nothing felt right. It felt secretive, wrong. Beyond lay another sealed door. Behind it, the burial chamber with 4 gilded shrines nested like Russian dolls, protecting a stone sarcophagus, protecting 3 golden coffins, protecting the mummy of a forgotten boy king. Here's what matters. The press later claimed Carter found an inscription warning, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." That inscription never existed. None of the archaeologists reported seeing it. It was invented, completely fabricated. But if there was no curse written on the walls, why did people start dying? Lord Carnarvon didn't believe in curses. He was a 20th century man of reason and science. In early April 1923, less than 5 months after opening the tomb, he was staying at the Continental Hotel in Cairo. One evening, a mosquito bit his left cheek. The next morning, his razor nicked the bite while shaving. The tiny cut became infected. Within days, his cheek was swollen and red, hot to the touch. His doctors diagnosed erysipelas, a severe bacterial skin infection. Blood poisoning followed, septicemia. His fever spiked. He became delirious, calling out names no one recognized. On April 5, 1923, at 1:55 a.m., Lord Carnarvon died in his hotel room. He was 57. A mosquito bite and a shaving nick had killed one of England's richest men. Then it got strange. At the exact moment Carnarvon died, every light in Cairo went out. The entire city plunged into darkness for 5 minutes. Officials blamed generator failure, but no documentation exists. At Carnarvon's English estate, Highclere Castle, his dog began howling. Staff heard it clearly through the night silence. The dog howled, collapsed, and died. The veterinarian found no cause. The time? 1:55 a.m., Cairo time. The newspapers exploded. Marie Corelli, a best-selling British novelist, wrote to the New York World claiming ancient texts warned that Egyptians cursed grave robbers. She couldn't produce these texts. Within days, headlines screamed worldwide, "Mummy's curse kills Lord Carnarvon." Death curse of pharaohs claims first victim. The curse inscription that never existed was suddenly quoted everywhere. The public believed every word. If Carnarvon's death was coincidence, explain what happened next. George J. Gould, American railroad millionaire, visited the tomb in 1923. He died of fever months later. Prince Ali Kamel Fahmy Bey toured the excavation and was shot dead by his wife in July. Acquitted at trial, she claimed something changed in her husband after visiting the tomb. Something dark. Colonel Aubrey Herbert, Carnarvon's half-brother, died of blood poisoning in September 1923. Wolf Joel, a South African millionaire who'd visited, committed suicide. The list grew. Archibald Douglas Reed, a radiologist who X-rayed Tutankhamun's mummy, fell ill and died in 1924. Arthur Mace, Carter's assistant archaeologist, succumbed to exhaustion and illness in 1928. He'd been healthy and middle-aged. Richard Bethel, Carter's personal secretary, was found dead in his bed in 1929 from apparent heart failure. He was 35 with no cardiac history. When his father, Lord Westbury, heard the news, he jumped from the 7th floor of his London apartment. His suicide note mentioned the curse explicitly. He couldn't bear it anymore. By 1930, paranoia had spread beyond Egypt. The British Museum received packages from citizens begging them to take back Egyptian artifacts. People reported bad luck, illness, financial ruin after acquiring mummy relics. Insurance companies discussed special curse clauses. Archaeologists refused Egyptian assignments. Even Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, publicly declared the deaths were caused by elementals, guardian spirits created by ancient priests. The man who'd written literature's most logical detective was endorsing supernatural murder. But one question remained unanswered. If there was a curse, why was Howard Carter still alive? Carter was inside that tomb almost daily. He'd breathed that ancient air for hours. He'd physically handled the mummy. If anyone should have been struck down, it was him. But he continued his work, cataloging every artifact, removing 5,000 objects over a decade. He seemed immune. In 1962, decades after the tomb's opening, microbiologist Dr. Ezzedine Taha published research that changed everything. Taha had been studying ancient Egyptian tombs, specifically the air inside sealed chambers. What he found was terrifying in its simplicity. Ancient tombs are perfect incubators for deadly pathogens. The mummification process used organic materials, linen, resins, food offerings, plant matter, animal products. Sealed in darkness for millennia, these materials became breeding grounds for fungi and bacteria. Specifically, Taha identified Aspergillus, a mold genus that thrives in exactly these conditions. When Aspergillus spores are disturbed and inhaled, they cause respiratory infections. If the person has any open wound or compromised immune system, the spores enter the bloodstream. The infection spreads to organs, fever spikes, the victim weakens rapidly. Without modern antibiotics, which didn't exist in 1923, the infection is often fatal. Remember Carnarvon's mosquito bite? The one he nicked shaving, creating an open wound? He'd been inside the tomb for weeks. He'd breathed the air, the spores were in his lungs. When he opened his skin, the infection had a direct route into his bloodstream. It wasn't a mosquito that killed him, it was what was already inside him, waiting. Taha's research explained so much: the sudden fevers, the mysterious infections, the way healthy people deteriorated rapidly. The tomb wasn't cursed by magic, it was cursed by biology. But here's the darkest irony. Shortly after publishing his findings, Dr. Ezzeddin Taha died in a car accident. The media couldn't resist. The curse strikes again. Yet the biological explanation doesn't account for everything. In 1980, Dr. Mark Nelson, an Australian scientist, conducted a statistical analysis. He tracked 44 people present at the tomb's opening or at the mummy's unwrapping. His findings were clear. Those exposed to the supposed curse lived an average of 70 years. A control group of Egyptologists not at the tomb lived an average of 75 years. 5 years difference. Statistically insignificant. Many who entered the tomb lived for decades. Carter didn't die until 1939, 17 years after opening the tomb. He was 64. Lady Evelyn Herbert, one of the first inside, lived until 1980. She was 79. Dr. Douglas Derry, who performed the autopsy on Tutankhamun's mummy and cut into the ancient flesh with his own hands, died in 1961 at 87. But 12 deaths within 7 years. Several of them young, healthy men. The bizarre circumstances, assassinations, suicides, murders. How do you explain the cluster? How do you explain Lord Westbury jumping from a window because he believed his son was killed by an ancient curse? Here's where psychology enters. The nocebo effect is the dark twin of the placebo effect. If you believe something will harm you, that belief manifests real physical symptoms. Stress and fear weaken the immune system. Anxiety triggers heart problems. In 1923, spiritualism was mainstream. The First World War had killed millions. Grieving families turned to seances, to mediums, hoping death wasn't the end. People were primed to believe in the supernatural. When newspapers screamed about curses, people expected to die. An expectation is powerful. Richard Bethel's father killed himself because he believed. The belief was the curse. If you're convinced you're doomed, and that conviction drives you to suicide, is the curse real? Philosophically, perhaps it is. But we haven't addressed the media's role in creating this monster. Arthur Weigel was a British journalist covering the excavation. When Carnarvon gave exclusive reporting rights to the Times of London, every other newspaper was locked out of the century's biggest archaeological story. They were furious. So they invented the curse. Weigel wrote a piece claiming that if Carnarvon entered the burial chamber, he'd give him 6 weeks to live. Carnarvon died almost exactly 6 weeks later. It seemed prophetic. But Weigel had seen Carnarvon at the site. He'd seen the infected mosquito bite. He knew the man was ill. It wasn't supernatural foresight. It was journalism weaponized as revenge. The curse was born from professional spite and circulation wars. But that doesn't explain the fungus. It doesn't explain Taha's spores. And it doesn't explain the coincidences that remain genuinely unexplained. The Cairo blackout at Carnarvon's exact moment of death. The simultaneous death of his dog in England, witnessed by multiple staff. Lord Westbury's suicide note specifically mentioning the curse. The concentration of violent deaths around people connected to the tomb. So what do we believe? Let's separate certainty from the unexplained. No curse inscription existed in Tutankhamun's tomb. The media invented and amplified the story for profit. Biological hazards, fungal spores and bacteria were real and documented. Statistical analysis shows no significant mortality increase among those exposed. Psychological belief in curses causes genuine physical harm through stress. Many who entered lived long, healthy lives. But 12 deaths in 7 years, several violent and bizarre. Specific coincidences defying easy explanation. A pattern of young, healthy individuals dying suddenly. These facts coexist with rational explanations, and they don't fully reconcile. Perhaps the curse of the pharaohs isn't supernatural. Perhaps it's something more human. Our need to find patterns in chaos, our vulnerability to fear, our willingness to believe some things are beyond understanding. Or perhaps the ancient Egyptians knew exactly what they were doing when they sealed that tomb. Not with magic words or angry gods, but with biology, with psychology, with the knowledge that sealed spaces become toxic, that disturbing the dead has consequences, and that belief itself can kill. Howard Carter spent a decade removing every artifact from Tutankhamun's tomb. He cataloged over 5,000 objects. He died at 64 from lymphoma. Yet before his death, he told a colleague something strange. "I've spent my life disturbing the dead. If there's any justice in the afterlife, I'll pay for it." Today, Tutankhamun's treasures are displayed in museums worldwide. Millions view them annually. The Golden Death Mask is humanity's most recognized artifact. But there's one item most people have never seen. A clay brick found in the tomb's treasury room bears a faint hieroglyphic inscription. Not a curse, a prayer. "I am the one who prevents the sand from choking the secret chamber. I am for the protection of the deceased." Protection, not from tomb robbers, from something getting out. In 2015, researchers entered Tutankhamun's burial chamber with modern ground-penetrating radar. They found something Carter had missed. A hidden doorway, sealed behind the north wall. It's still sealed. The Egyptian government hasn't authorized entry. No one knows what's behind it. And in the darkness of that chamber, 3,000 years after a forgotten boy was laid to rest, that door remains closed. Some doors, it seems, were never meant to be opened.